I had 26 broken bones, I had a ruptured spleen, I had facial lacerations, I had a broken skull, I don't have bone beneath my eye.
You are watching Zen-Brain. In India, every year, lakhs of students aspire to get admission into the IITs, or the Indian Institute of Technology. Or perhaps I should say it's the dream of lakhs of parents that their child gets admission into IIT. It's a prestigious institution, there's no doubt about it, where only the brightest make it. Preshit Gupta, a young boy from Mathura, is among those who did make it. But he soon discovered it was just the beginning of a physical, emotional, and mentally challenging journey. A journey he struggled with. Why? That's what we are here to find out. First of all, thanks, Preshit, for reaching out to me and Zen-Brain, for being here to share your story.
It's my pleasure, Shruti, and it's rather not discovering you, but rather connecting with you because the vibes are so symbiotic. Like the content and the video just connects with the heart.
Well, thank you for saying that, Preshit, and we hope this discussion also connects with those who need to see it. Now, obviously, Preshit, you're a very bright boy to have been able to get through to IIT, right? But preparations, whether for medical or engineering, is a process by itself, and not always without physical, emotional, and mental health issues. So many students have written in to us on Zen-Brain, telling us about the toll that this stress takes on them. So tell us about this entrance preparation stress that you went through.
So the journey to IIT was, I won't say it was an easy one. Like you come in with a certain mindset, coming from a small town mindset, get in a job and marry and just go through the rituals of life as you were meant to. So having a particular dream and then chasing it in itself sets you a bit apart from others. My brother was a really bright child, more than me. He chose engineering and went ahead to go to Kota for his studies, and that was something that I saw with my own eyes, his own struggle, falling short of it as well. And while he was going through that journey, um, he he wasn't able to manage his anxiety well, and that led to him to develop stress diabetes. He was actually in the ICU getting his insulin drips. This is something that you realize later on. Oh, this happened because of anxiety.
So your brother ultimately did not make it to the IITs, and you did, right? So what was it that you did which was different from what he did?
For about 6 months, I went in all hands on, and since it was a dream that my parents carried for my brother, and they didn't see it getting successful, so I thought that I should take up this challenge and try to pursue the IIT dreams. If not for me, for my parents, for my brother, for everyone who thought that no, this is something that is really unachievable and it is not something that anyone can do. I had a timetable. I used to wake up early. I used to eat my meals on time. I used to do everything, but still I wasn't acing it. I was still struggling with the studies and the mental mindset.
Why were you struggling?
I thought people around me were more talented or more intelligent. We all have this certain imposter syndrome where we feel if we are coming from a small town or a middle class mindset, we are somehow less able than people who have been living in metros.
Imposter syndrome, I think all of us have it. And I know of very successful people who still question everything that they're doing, even if they are brilliant at what they do.
While carrying that imposter syndrome, then I started to actually look into a few students whom I really aspired to, who used to top regularly. I tried to inculcate a few habits from them. And one thing I did realize from the people I liked, and this is something that holds true for me and might not hold true for anyone else. It is the balanced life. For talking to their family who were studying 8 to 10 hours a day and then taking breaks, playing games, maintaining a healthy lifestyle, great impact on when they start down to study. How much are you able to absorb or understand from one reading is something that is game changing. Like you can go through piece of material 10 times and you might not understand it. A healthy lifestyle really impacted them. Of course, I didn't think of that before.
This is a very important point. It really matters how much you absorb the first time you read something. And that comes in hindsight, you feel that comes when you have a balanced life, where you're able to absorb more. That's a very, very valid point. And I hope people there are listening. But let's go on to you getting through to IIT. Now, you joined IIT and you enrolled under civil engineering. Is that right?
Yeah.
Your father was a civil engineer, right? How much of it was prompted by what your father did, or was it something that you also wanted or aspired to do, or was it the course that you could get? Because you realized soon enough that you weren't interested in civil engineering. Isn't that right?
That's true. That's true. Getting into civil engineering was something that I hadn't even thought of. For that matter, I don't think anyone who is completing any competitive exam when they're in 12th or if they take a drop year,
they aren't really clear about what it is that they want to do. They just want to get through to the IITs.
And the choosing of departments take place like, do you like cars or do you like construction work? Do you like buildings? Do you like electronics? So that is how they all try to sort out their branches. And it's a very important point that they're choosing a particular discipline that might be there for their entire life. A choice that they cannot revoke or change in their meantime when they realize what they actually want to do. When your mind starts growing and you start interacting with people and you realize, oh, I didn't want to do civil engineering, maybe I was better at electrical. Maybe I was good at electrical, I was better at computer science. When they get that realization, when they're not able to pick what they actually want to do, it creates a vicious circle where you're not doing what you'd like to do, but you are qualified to do something that you don't want to.
So what did you do? Because you were stuck with civil engineering, which you didn't want, but you weren't able to change that either. So what happened then?
I had a little breakdown of sorts when I entered IIT. Most people get really joyous when they enter IIT and full of zeal, confidence, arrogance, enthusiasm, and all sort of things. But when I was studying in Kota, some teachers do tell you that once you get into your IIT, oh, life's set. Employers will be standing outside to just pick you up. I got into IIT and you have immensely talented people over there who are doing stuff that you, even if you try to do it regularly, you might not be able to do it as good as they're doing it right now in front of you. You hear some really inspiring stories as well in IIT, like people who didn't play chess, they learned it with such a passion that they are excelling it by the time they're in the third or fourth year. They're able to play in the grandmasters. They're really outperforming. I've seen 2 or 3 squash players who hadn't touched the squash racket in their third, fourth year. They were getting gold medals in IIT, pretty close to national levels. Seeing people pursue passion while having the intellectual capability to be also managing their studies. How do I even catch up with these folks? They are super bombs. So then you have to start looking inwards, which is what I did. In this area where everyone can excel at everything and you have potential mentors where you can ask for advice and start pursuing something that you actually want. What do you actually want?
So that's the difference, isn't it, Preshit? You're talking about like for many aspirants, it's almost like getting through to institutions like IIT is the goal, when actually it should not be that goal. It is the beginning of a journey. Once you get to IIT, it's just the beginning, because then you need to start all over again, almost. Right. And many people that I've spoken to who are from IIT have actually transformed their entire mindset once they get through to IIT, because then you need to work that much harder. And as you said in the beginning, there comes with it a balance, which you realize now in hindsight, but you didn't know at that time. And I think these kids, these guys who actually did manage to excel in chess or whether it was squash, found that balance somehow, which is why people keep saying co-curricular activities are important. Excelling in something else besides your studies is important because it builds into what you study. So what was this breakdown that you were talking about?
In terms of breakdown, it wasn't really severe that I had transitioned into severe into depression or severe depression levels. It was very mild case of depression that I was able to recover. It took almost a year to recover from that part. The struggle basically was that now you're attending some classes that you don't want to. I personally had a fascination with businesses and startups. Fortunately, I had a good mentor in Aishwarya Chaturvedi, who's my senior, and I still reach out to him. He himself had gone through the same stages that I was going through, and he was kind enough to mentor me in that particular area.
Mostly you'll find people are willing to help. So that's a very, very important point for people, for students who are struggling at this point. Find yourself a good mentor. So Preshit, let's move on. So you were in a major accident. Talk to us about the physical injury itself, and how long were you in hospital, and how much of a struggle was it to complete your course?
After the accident, it was like 10 cycles thrown into 1 year. I had suddenly lost so many skills that I used to have.
Tell us about the accident itself.
So the accident was during the time of rendezvous, and it was when I was in my final year.
People who don't know what rendezvous is, it's your annual festival at IIT Delhi.
And so I was getting up some stuff from Gurgaon for the event on the next day. The car had an accidental breakdown where the front tire of the car burst, and since it was really speedy and it was late in the night around 3 or 4, and I also had a few of my friends in the car who also suffered minor injuries. I was seated at the back. I didn't have a seatbelt on. I was sleeping in the car because it was late night. I won't go much into the gory details. I had 26 broken bones. I had a ruptured spleen. I had facial lacerations. I had a broken skull. I don't have bone beneath my eye right now. It's all thanks to the doctors. I'm still able to look and function pretty well from my condition, but it was a really intense accident, and post that accident I realized, oh, I'm not able to sit long hours. I'm not able to function properly. If I start reading something, my mind wanders off pretty easily, because for a period of 2 to 3 months, and this is that period in which folks were preparing for their jobs. I think that is the biggest aspiration for people when they enter into IIT, that package kya laga.
How long were you in hospital, and how did that impact you?
So I was in the hospital for about 16 days. I had to undergo 3 major surgeries. For 2 months, I had to go through an entire liquid diet. I couldn't eat on my own. My whole skull was shattered. I was losing a sense of what I used to do.
So you were in hospital for 16 days. Most of it was in the ICU. You had 3 major surgeries. Then you were on a liquid diet for 2 months. And then you decided to go back to IIT to complete your course. How was it trying to manage your studies, first of all? But how was it overall? How did it impact you physically, of course, but emotionally and mentally?
It was a really harrowing time when I returned to the campus for getting a job. So at that time I hadn't recovered fully. I was still on the liquid diet. I went to IT to get that job, because job nahi hogi to kya fayda, you know. And at that time I felt that I had this onus on me that I should get on my feet back again and function back again. And job seemed to be the only way to do that particular thing. Placements began, and I was fumbling a lot in the interviews. The questions and content that I actually knew, I was spelling it out wrongly, or I was being hesitant in saying some things that I knew were correct.
It affected your speech, your communication, everything was affected. Right?
Intensely. My EQ was down, my IQ was down. I had to settle down for a job that I didn't dream of joining. So after 4 days rejected on 5 continuous days, I was really heartbroken and shattered. And at that time, and I'm not saying that people don't have bigger troubles. I was so much stuck that I had suicidal thoughts at that particular time. And I was contemplating whether I should just end it, where like you're broken from your body, you're low on your IQ, people around you are having the time of their lives after getting selected, and it becomes really difficult, and it's difficult to find a purpose to continue living.
We were talking earlier, and you did mention that you actually made out this list, pros and cons of why you should live. My question to you is, and I think a lot of students are facing this, because why would so many of them reach out to us? What drives you to that? Because you have a family backing you. Yes. What is it that drove you to this? And what is it that made you come out of this suicidal thinking?
Day 5, when I didn't get a job, and it was like 2 a.m. in the morning because the interviews last long. So I was roaming on the roof and contemplating this particular suicidal thought. But I started to create a list about why I should live and why I shouldn't live. And I think that particular thing really helped me get a better clarity of my thoughts, I guess. if I end it, there's no recovery. I will miss out on the good part of the life. I had more important reasons to live than to not live. That particular journey helped me really shape this thought ki nahi, I should. It's okay. People have accidents. People have do mistakes. You can always recover.
It's never the end of the road. Did you start having these thoughts because a lot of what you were facing was out of your control? You had an accident at a time where you should have been at your peak. You should have been getting the right jobs. You should have been doing all that. But the thing is that it wasn't in your control. And were there other students within the campus that were going through these struggles? Is this a common thing that you find a lot of students struggling with?
Oh, absolutely. Suicides in IITs is something that has started to get a bit of air now. It's still in its nascent stages, and people don't realize the extent of what students are going through and what high pressure situations can do to people who are not who don't have a particular mentor or a healthy way of living in that particular stressful situation. I could really see my friends who were impressive students, great minds. They were struggling to get a particular job that they even didn't even want to do in their life. That was something that people were struggling. Few students were really outperformers and they had a growth mindset. They had already discovered what they wanted to do. And
a majority of students aren't really clear about what they want to do, but they take in jobs because the salaries are high. Not even the parents, they themselves have expectations of themselves to have these high salaries without really looking at what is it that they really want to do. Could that be one of the reasons?
It's a huge reason, Shruti. I think when students are not trying out what they actually want to do, they get stuck in a particular traditional mindset. If I haven't tried out social media, if I didn't write blogs, I didn't get into content, I wouldn't have discovered I was good at content. I wouldn't have discovered that I was good at technology or data analytics. I discovered them by doing things.
So many of us are defined by our careers or what we do, right? And many times, I would not say all, but many times, these are things that we do because we want to satisfy someone else's aspirations, either parents, peer group. But if you are not comfortable doing what you are doing, sometime in life it's going to catch up, and therefore it will lead to mental health crisis. In many situations, that is the sole reason, where you are trapped, where you're doing stuff that you are not interested in doing. So you're really not 100% there. I've spoken to many psychologists and psychiatrists, and all of them are of this opinion that we have a crisis in our hands, primarily because people are so busy people pleasing most of the time that we forget what it is that we want. And it's only in our 40s that we wake up to that fact and we start doing what we love doing. So why waste our 20s and 30s trying to people please? Tell us what your experience has been.
Sometimes people have financial responsibilities and financial duties where they do need a job. Their families might not be in a particularly healthy financial condition, and that might force them to pick a job. What I feel is that your job shouldn't define what you want to do. You should always try out new stuff. And thought from Gary Vaynerchuk really interesting, where 20s is supposed to be your testing 20s. Like you test everything out that's out there in the world. What's there to lose at the end of the day? Trying out different things is something that people in their 20s shouldn't miss out on. People in their 20s want stability, but you shouldn't seek stability when you are in your 20s. If you're restricting yourself, you are restricting a lot of unhidden potential that you might be surprised to discover.
But Preshit, you're right when you say that there are financial responsibilities that many people have to take care of. Kids in their 20s who are the sole earning members who need to do it. Those people apart, there are a lot of people who, as you rightly said, need to experiment to find out what is it that they want to do. But, like I said, it's easier said than done. Let's talk about mental health post your accident and during your working years. You faced severe mental health challenges. Yeah. How did you get out of it? Because that's important.
The story starts when I joined in the first company. I had a picture of pursuing the passion for your job and that startup founder's mindset all along. And entering into a company where you enter the gate and you see rows and columns of people working tirelessly on the computer, talking to people. And it was really, I had a mini tremor that am I going to be the one in 150 or 200 odd people who will be defined by their row number and column number? How long is that going to be? And that that put me in a state of uncertainty that is it something that I really want to do. With that, I also was carrying some issues because of my mental health.
You were still not completely recuperated from your accident, right? In fact, you mentioned that you still struggle with some of the things which are not 100% back. When you joined your first job, that was still a challenge. You were still having problems physically, but tell us about the real mental health challenges.
The mental health challenges were starting to take their toll by the day. I thought that this is not going to be my life for a long time, but I'll have to settle in for 2 to 3 years in doing this particular thing. But while doing it, I couldn't even carrying to the another day. It seemed to be like, how do I do about it? I had existential questions on a daily basis. Ki, चल क्या रहा है ये कर क्या रहा हूँ कर क्या रहा हूँ कर क्या रहा हूँ. Your coworkers and or your manager are really empathetic to what you went through or what troubles you. If you're not able to do something, तुम्हारे में passion की कमी है, तुम्हारे में knowledge की कमी है, तुम्हारे में will power की कमी है, कुछ सुधारो, तुम ऐसे काम नहीं होता है.
That's the thing, Preshit, coming back, you have been through trauma, which many people, I don't find acknowledging how trauma has impacted them. We haven't actually gone into the severity of the accident itself, but you were thrown out of the car, you were lying on the streets, you were sent to hospital, you were on your own. And there you realize that you have 32 broken bones, including a fractured skull. It is huge trauma. You get back to IIT, you're not able to perform as you wanted to. You get into a job where you think you are capable of it, but somebody else keeps telling you that you are not. It's almost that you're convinced that you're not good enough because somebody else is constantly telling you that. How do you snap out of this?
Stopping to listen to authority and starting to listen to yourself is the biggest takeaway here. I won't say that they were 100% wrong. It would have been better for me to take a break and recoup myself. I didn't do that, unfortunately, because you don't get out of IIT and not do a job. Look inwards rather than looking outwards when you're facing challenges.
As we discussed, stop with the people pleasing. You realize in life that nobody really gives a damn. And the sooner you realize it, the better for you. From IIT, you get into a job and then you're not able to perform as per what you're capable of. And there are things which are holding you back physically, mentally, emotionally. And you're also asked to go. You're asked to leave the job, right? What is your message to people who are facing that crisis right now?
Firstly, you should assess whether they were correct in their judgment or not. And don't do it by yourself. Find someone whom you actually shared some office space, because people talk around you. Again, make a self-assessment, assessing what you are good at and what you actually want to do, and having career plans for like 5 or 10 years and having life goals in that particular manner is really helpful, because then it slows you, it calms you down.
So Preshit, you have decided to get into mental health and mental health awareness. And I really applaud you and I encourage you to do that, because the more people like us to talk about it and destigmatize emotional and mental health, because a lot of it is coming from emotional issues that we don't talk about enough. We don't have these conversations enough. The thing is that no one can actually get you out of it. Only you yourself can. What do you want to achieve through getting into mental health?
You pointed out towards emotional learning. I think socio-emotional learning is something that is missing from current generation and the generations to come. Knowing what your particular emotions are, knowing what your thoughts are, these are life skills. They can be life-changing. Having a sense of your own particular thoughts, moods, and behaviors and feelings, they just, at least you know what you're doing at your particular end. Socio-emotional learning is something that falls around people. And when people look at mental health, people look at just the two ends of the spectrum, mental health troubles, and on the rightmost side, there are people who are focusing on peak performance and like productivity and work 20 hours a day and do it, and those sort of things. I intend to have a outlook for the people who fall in the middle of the curve and who are the greater majority. And I want people to shift from the proactive mental health side, where they are not taking care of the mental health, they are not aware about it, because they might not be aware about it, they might not think about it, or they might think that it's a really pedestrian thing. As I see the generation that's coming out of colleges, they feel that having depression or anxiety is just something that happens. They don't have the necessary tools or they haven't been taught those necessary tools on how to handle your thoughts. Because let's be honest, anxiety, anxious thoughts, and getting anxious and getting low is something that is a part of life. You need to recover yourself from that.
And I encourage you, and I know that you're focusing on those tools, and I wish you the very best, Preshit. And like you said, step one is to focus on emotional health. And if it is mental health issues, then see whether you do need medical intervention as well. That is something that, I keep mentioning. Medicines simply help reverse the chemical imbalance in the brain, and that could help you begin some form of exercise, walking, getting some sunshine or vitamin D and other vitamin supplements, eating the right food, increasing fiber in your diet, which is very crucial. Fruits, vegetables that get your metabolism going and energy up. And of course, gorging the right content, positive content to help guide you through, which I think both of us are trying to do in our own journey and in our own way. So Preshit, thank you very much for joining us on Zen-Brain, for highlighting what you've been through, your personal experience. And once again, I wish you the very best.
It was an honor to have this discussion, Shruti. I think I have learned more now than what I had learned, what I knew an hour back. Very happy to be here with you on Zen-Brain and share my journey.